Hi, my name is Shaye. Welcome to my YouTube channel where I discuss various topics that interest me. I today I'm going to discuss something that we all love to talk about. If you've been following the economy, the trends online, the conversations around the economy and several other stats that are economic indicators, right, of a downturn, everyone's talking about money in some shape or form. We're talking about how to make it, how to keep it, how to stretch it, what to do with it. There are people on here who advise you savings are not a good thing, you should spend it, or you hear so many contradicting ideas, right? You put it in a savings account, it's losing value. You don't put it in a savings account and you invest it, it could be risky because you don't know what's happening with the market, and stocks are kind of risky. So you should put it in funds. Well, you shouldn't put it in funds. You should put it in high yield savings accounts. There is a lot of opinions on here. And I want to preface with I am not a financial advisor. I am not a financial expert. This series is my attempt to share what I have learned, both the hard way, very hard way, and the very long way, and sometimes just by having honest conversations in my time on this earth that have helped me get better with money. As someone who I said in other series lacks discipline and likes enjoyment. So, so I am one who, contrary to what may be a presumption, because I had said in previous videos that my profession was in accounting finance. So you would think that means I am very meticulous with numbers when it comes to my personal numbers. I'm meticulous with client numbers, but my numbers, you would. I think there's this stereotype of people in those fields being people who live by spreadsheets, who live and die by spreadsheet, who calculate every cent that comes out of their account, who are very, very disciplined. And I've said repeatedly, like, I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm a big picture person. I have a general sense, like, if I have my parameters to play within, the rest is freestyle for me. I'm going to do what makes me feel good and what makes sense for me, which may not be what other people can live with. So when it came to the topic of money, and it helps to maybe go back to my story of origin in terms of how I started my career as a young individual, because there are a lot of young people who maybe aren't in the same position career wise as I was. So I was fortunate to go to a very prominent college and I did pretty well. I mean, I was an awkward kid, but I did pretty well in terms of my grades. It was just something that I picked my profession, not necessarily because it was a passion, but because it was something that came naturally to me. Numbers from high school, I remember taking my first accounting course and quickly realizing as the teacher was teaching and we're going through tests, like, oh, this is simple. I assumed it was simple for everyone until I realized, I was getting good grades and not everyone was. I was like, oh, okay. This seems second nature for me, which was the opposite experience of taking science courses. When I took science courses, I quickly realized I don't know what the heck these people are doing in here. I don't know why I'm here. I'm just trying to make it. I'm just trying to get a C and get the F out of here. So shout out to the doctors and anyone else who did science or science-based topics. I quickly realized that that's not for me. Numbers came to me quickly, which again seems odd for someone who has a short attention span and lacks discipline. But something about numbers, I think there's a black and white nature to it. There's just a to me, and I use this my language from my perspective. It might not be common sense to everyone. To me, it seemed common sense, like literally 1 + 1 = 2, and I could run from there. So that was high school. Ended up in college, realizing, okay, I'm gonna do accounting. Numbers come easy to me. Pick the college that I knew. And this might be advice for young people. No, again, I'm not an expert. Do what you want with your life. But if you're in the midst of trying to pick a college and you're trying to pick majors, I will say the one thing that I did correctly, that I'm thankful I did, is I did think through the subject that I was taking. What would the end result be? As in my case, I wanted a lucrative job. And who are the top players in the field that I am trying to study in? Where do they go look for college kids? What schools do they recruit from? Alongside the other things I was looking for in a school, I wanted diversity. I wanted a distance from home, but I didn't want it to be so far from home. I wanted to have exposure to international students, like I had all that. But really, the big thing was, can I make money when I go to this college and come out? Because I was going to be paying for college myself. I wasn't fortunate to have a college fund sitting somewhere to fund my studies, right? So I needed to be in a college that I knew would be lucrative. So I picked my college. I went to it. Actually, I'm going ahead. Before I went to a 4 year college, I did community college. Let's talk about that because again, lots of expert on online and tell you what you should and shouldn't do. I think if you are in a financial position where you can't pay for college outright, where there isn't a college fund sitting somewhere cushioning for you, where the finances will fall on you, it is highly advisable to consider a community college for your freshman and your sophomore year. And I say this because one, that's what helped me financially be able to carry myself through my undergraduate studies. Because community college was affordable. I could pay as I go. It wasn't the amount of debt you would acquire in a 4 year Ivy League college. And I was able to, in that freshman and sophomore year, because it's mostly general studies, it's not anything, they're not specifically catered to your major. So those kind of courses you can stack them in a community college. There is no issue. And it's easily transferable credits. Like if you take English in one college, it's usually you can take English anywhere, right? You could take it over. It's when you get into those specialized courses that you may start running into issues about transferring credit. But again, I ain't an expert. Do your research. So that was what I did. That worked for me. I did community college for freshman and sophomore year while I was working full time. So I was able to pay those as I went. Got my community college degree, already knew what college I wanted to go to, transferred over with my credits. So I then went in doing my junior and my senior year. My junior year, the first semester in that particular college, because it's the first time when you go there, especially in their business studies, they make you go through what's called a business orientation course, where you basically learn, and I think this is really good. I don't think all schools do this, where you learn the nuts and bolts about business, how to dress, how to interview. You get paired up with mentor organizations. And I knew this. This is why I picked that school, because it's like, this would be, again, it's a school that preps you to go get a job in business. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So we got to start rubbing shoulders with professionals, start talking to companies that could potentially be employers. And in that process, I made a connection with the company early on, also vis a vis my professor recommending that that company sought me out because of my grades and my performance in class. And they took me to dinner, didn't know I was being interviewed, which is a theme in my life. Maybe I'll do a job series one day where I have been fortunate that oftentimes I don't do an interview in the traditional sense. I have discussions, and it's just like, oh, okay, we want you to take this job, you know. So in that case, I had a dinner, and the next day in my email was an offer for an internship for my senior semester, and I also had graduate studies. So it was supposed to cover me for that semester I was in the junior year, in my senior semester, and after I was done with grad school, continue on and start with the company. Very fortunate. It was a paid internship. It was pretty lucrative. All of that was great. But I think the key thing here was I started making money early. I already had student loans. I did not think for 1 minute, ooh, you're making money. And keep in mind, I said I'd already started working full time when I was in community college. So I had cash flow. At no point did it occur to me, this was my first, like, ooh, things I could have done differently. I should probably start paying back this student loan while I have cash flow. And my interest is not quite yet accruing because I'm still in school. So I could just really tackle that principle. So by the time I graduated, I wasn't in this accumulation world that you tend to get into once you've graduated. I didn't think about that. And it's nothing wrong with it. I was a young person who started making money for the first time. I wanted to live. I wanted to get my own apartment. I wanted to get a car. I wanted to go out with the friends. I wanted to take the trips. I did that, lived that life. But I did that. I graduated. I started full-time work, which again, you're getting paid more, but you're also working more. Now you're really working the hours. You're seeing what the life is like. And I was fortunate to make enough to buy my first property. Again, by all accounts on the outside, I was doing well, but I had no savings. I literally was living paycheck to paycheck. I was taking the trips. I was doing all the festivals. I did the Essence Fest so many times I can't even count. That's why I can't do it now. I've done it so many times. I could tell you the what do you call it, itinerary, without even thinking about it. I don't think they've changed it in years. I did all the travel. I did all the girls trip. I did all that stuff, but I was literally living paycheck to paycheck. And I also wasn't investing in. I wasn't taking advantage of employer benefits like my 401k. Um, I think I remember the first time I started the job and they sat with us and they talked about 401k. And I was like, yeah, that's great, but I want all my money. I want all my money to do it as I please. Like retirement seems like such a faraway concept when you're in your 20s. You're not thinking, I should start planning. You're not thinking compounding interest. You're not thinking investments. And again, keep in mind, I am someone who did finance accounting and I did pretty well in it in school. So I knew the concept. But I like to tell people knowing the concept and the application in real life are two different things. It's just, you can conceptualize till you die, but if you haven't lived it, if you haven't experienced it, if you haven't done it, then it's all fiction, basically, in my opinion, you know? So I was living that life. I was like, I'm fine. Got the pictures for the gram and the Facebook. At that time, it was mostly Facebook. Living this life, had my property, had my car, etc. And I recall there were a few incidences where emergencies came up because they do, you know, a car might break down, or in that case, I was a property owner. My HVAC broke at one point, and here I was with no savings, and I have to quickly figure out how do I fund this, and I don't have a partner fund or like a family fund to draw on. It literally is just me, myself, and me. So I think what most people do, you go get a loan, right? You get a credit card or you get something, but then you quickly learn it becomes this hole that you get yourself in that you can get out of. So here I am already with the student loan. I got the car, so we know we have a car note. And now I have a mortgage because I got a property. And now I have extra debt because life. But I'm making really good money by all accounts for a 20 something year old. I had a moment, I remember looking around me, and actually, two things. I was dating someone at some point who made significantly less than me. And I remember them making a comment about how much they had saved, and it almost blew my mind. I was like, how is that? Like, you literally make half of what I earn. How have you saved thousands when I can barely sustain myself month to month? And I'm a finance and accounting person, right? In addition to, I'm one of those people who, when I'm in a dilemma, again, I look around, I observe, I want to see what everyone's doing and see what worked for me because not everyone's, I take pieces of what could work for me. And I remember I had a close friend who I admired how they navigated their finances. They were in a profession that wasn't finance accounting, it was more entrepreneurial driven, but I also knew it had its ebbs and flows. But somehow they were able to set up their life that, to me, seemingly from the outside looking, they were financially stable. And this is my second advice in this, if anyone asks, I ain't an expert. When it comes to money, some of my best decisions or best moves have been being vulnerable with people I trust, being vulnerable with people I admire. So in this case, this friend I approached and I said, hey, I know you don't do finance accounting, but who manages your money? Like, how do you manage your money? How did you get to the point where you own multiple properties and you seem comfortable and, you're living this life and you're not even in an industry like mine where it's like, you can make the money with your eyes closed. And I remember that's when she told me she got help. Like, she got help. She got someone to assist her. And I started, considering at that point. I don't think I pulled the trigger for a few years, but I started considering like this might be where you need to go. But my pride being a finance counselor, I was like, I could figure it out. What are they going to do? Give me a spreadsheet? I could do a spreadsheet, Is it a budget? I could do a budget. And while all that is fine and dandy, Another advice that I ain't an expert, my 2 cents, is you quickly learn, again, having the budget doesn't mean you're going to stick to it. And I think a budget is necessary to know parameters, to know your ins and outs. But I think before you even build a budget, you have to have an honest conversation on what type of person are you? Are you detail oriented? Are you big concepts? Are you someone who's motivated by saving and seeing that number bloom in an account? Are you someone who's motivated by experiences and things, and that's what makes you want to go work harder and etc.? Because the way you plan your financial future should be driven by your personal characteristics, right? Not all of us are motivated by looking at an account that just keeps ballooning. Not all of us are. Some people are, and it's great for them, but not all of us are. And not all of us are also motivated by 50 million purses in our house. Not all of us are. So you have to be honest about that and then work backwards to start building processes. And this is where I think my profession came into play, because a lot of what I did early on in my career is helping people set up processes and controls and things to make things run. Set up processes in your life that will work specifically for you. So I remember having that conversation with her. And then another conversation I had, because again, remember I said I made a lot of money, in my opinion. So I thought, why can't I make it? Like why am I struggling? And part of it is, yes, I lacked the financial acumen to be responsible with the money. But also part of it was what I didn't realize. And this is where some socio-economic stuff will come into play. Look, I live in the United States. The reality is things are not equitable. Depending on who you are, what you look like, etc. That's just life. You can argue with yourself. That's just life. Like that's just the reality. But I remember this was about the time I was in the midst of trying to make a career shift, and I had befriended somebody in the workplace who was a colleague who did not look like me. Um, you take from that what you will. Did not look like me, but we were peers in the terms of experience and et cetera, et cetera. And up until then, like I had said, when I got opportunities, I was just baffled that people wanted to give me a job. Right? I remember I said straight from school, they fed me and they were like, here's an offer. I never thought about what my market value was and why they were so eager to hire me. And did I have a say in what I got? I never didn't even ask questions about, again, things I did not know at that time. But I remember in this case, I was in the midst of trying to make a move to another position, that I had a friend who was a colleague who looked nothing like me stepping out of a similar position. And I was just excited to be considered for the position. But something in me, because I had gotten close to this colleague, said, try to have an honest conversation with them about what you're about to sign up for. And in our talks, for some reason, and I can't remember verbatim how it came up, but the conversation of compensation came up. And at the time, I had already been made an offer for the position. She was vacating it, I was stepping into it, that I was excited about, because it was like, I think it was my first time making well into the six figures. I was like, oh, this, I am rich. You can tell me I'm not rich. I'm wealthy at this point. Even though I'm living paycheck to paycheck, but that's a different conversation. So I was already keen on taking on the role. So I actually thought that conversation was going to be more about what are the nuts and bolts, the day to day, the lookouts for the role. But somehow, and maybe she's just intuitive, and I love her dearly. I haven't spoken to her in a while, but I love her dearly because she doesn't realize she really shifted my mindset in terms of compensation, how I navigate those conversations with companies. Because keep in mind, this is a company I'm already in, so I'm just trying to move over, right? I'm not outside coming in. I'm in. We're just trying to. And she happened to mention what she made because she was on her way out. She didn't care. She was like, this is what they paid me for this role. You should know. So when you're having those conversations, this is what you should make. What she was making versus what I was offered was at least 20 grand less. And this was years ago. So you even compound that with inflation, right? This was years ago. And keep in mind, we had same experience, same background. I'm already in-house, practically doing the role. I've done the role for a bigger company. There was no reason skill set wise that the gap should be that much. And I remembered even before I had that conversation, when I was given my offer, I was told, Oh, this is the top end of the band. And if you don't know what band is, so typically when you hire for roles in companies, they have a range. For each role, they have a range of here's what we're willing to pay for this skill, for this market, for this location, etc. Right? Based on the job responsibilities. And usually there's a high end and there's a low end of the range. And they usually scale it depending on your experience, your background, where you live, blah blah blah. We lived in the same place. We're in the same office practically. Same. The only thing is we look different. And I remember she said her amount. But when I was made my offer, I was given the impression like this is the high end of the band. Like you are getting the top of the band. Different conversation for a different day, right? About how to negotiate compensation. So I then quickly had the knowledge that, hey, perhaps my money issue isn't just my lack of discipline with what I'm getting. I'm also not getting as much as everybody else. Because I had never gotten anything, I thought what I was getting was great. And in comparison to people in my similar socioeconomic status, I'm probably doing great. But when you zoom out in the broader lens of what I was doing, the amount of time and effort and experience and aptitude it took, I wasn't getting what I deserved. So I was also not just battling what I was spending, but what was coming in wasn't equitable. So that led me down a road of starting to negotiate my pay. And not just my pay, but ask very robust questions around the entire comprehensive package. Like, what are you offering me outside of just my base pay? What are the perks? What are the requirements for this job? What will I need to succeed here? What do I need to step my foot in the door comfortably, knowing whatever the risk is and the setup is? So, key money moment for me. And all through these lessons, the theme, like I said, is having honest, vulnerable conversations with people where you're seeking to learn, you're seeking to leverage perhaps their experience, and also share if they can benefit from you. And my hope is doing this money series to do the same, to share without giving too much personal details, because at the end of the day, some things are confidential. Sorry. But broader lessons that I have learned from college up until my later professional years that have benefited me to be in a more stable financial position. As someone who's single, I don't have dual income and I don't have multiple hustles. As contrary to popular belief about hustle culture, I've only worked a job. I've only worked a job and invested on the side, but I've only worked a job. And that has been sufficient to take care of me, my needs, and also help me support some of my family members. So I'm hoping this could be a money series around those types of topics, talking about what budgeting looks like for me, who's not disciplined and likes nice things. What does that look like? Talk about workplace, how to negotiate with an employer, what to look for in an offer, how to ask the right questions, how to make sure you are taken care of to step into that job. Have conversations about retirement. You know, the thing that I put off for so long, thinking about retirement, saving for retirement. How do you do it as someone who, again, is not the most disciplined and likes to live in the present and enjoy the present? Balancing that with planning for your future self. What does that look like? And several other topics that I'm sure will naturally evolve. So, this is the money series. Again, I am not a financial advisor. I do have a background in finance and accounting, but I'm not giving anybody advice. I'm not an expert. I'm not, I'm not the investment guys. I'm not the hedge fund guys. Like there's a ton of them online. But this is just real life lessons I've learned, sharing them in small little snippets in hope that they help shorten somebody else's journey. They help ease someone else's decision making and they're of use to someone else. All right. So this is the first one, it's just an intro. The next one will go into more of those specific topics. I hope you all are still enjoying the summer, staying cool, and I'll see you next time.